So a first baseman, an outfielder, and a catcher all walk into the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. Hey guys, Graham here from out of left field. Yesterday, 2017 inductees into the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York were announced, and Jeff Bagwell of the Houston Astros, Tim Raines of the Montreal Expos most notably, and Pudge Rodriguez, a catcher for the Rangers, for the Nationals, for the world champion Marlins, multiple teams, gets in. Three guys well deserving of a call to the Hall. And we still saw some guys who I think deserve to get in who got left out. Now, we're going to touch on those guys here in just a minute. But let's take a look at the guys who we're going to see give those heartfelt speeches here just a couple of months up at Cooperstown. Jeff Bagwell, a first baseman for the Houston Astros his entire career. He and Craig Biggio were the fearsome twosome, right? Those guys, if you saw one, you knew the other was going to be there. Jeff Bagwell, a guy with 2,300 hits, almost 450 home runs, over 1,500 runs driven in, a 297 career batting average. The impressive thing to me was his 408 on base. Now, why would a 408 on base be impressive? Because he struck out 1,558 times, but walked 1,401. So a power hitter, a guy with almost 450 long balls, only walks 150 fewer times than he strikes out. That, to me, says it all about the kind of player that Jeff Bagwell was. Now, he had a .993 fielding percentage. Now, at first base, but still, you get some hard hit balls that way. Great at scooping the ball. Should have been in the Hall of Fame. Why wasn't he in there sooner? Simple. PED allegations. Guys, allegations are the worst. Nothing proven, just thought. Just like with guys like Ivan Rodriguez, who we'll get to in just a minute. Mike Piazza, most notably, who was left out of the Hall of Fame for a couple of years because of back acne. That could be a side effect of PEDs. Maybe he used. Let's not put him in. You cannot leave guys out because you think maybe they used. If you don't want guys in who used, that's fine. If they're proven, I get it. I respect the opinion. It's not mine, but I respect it. But a guy like Jeff Bagwell, who was never proven to have used any substance to alter his body, should not have been held out for 7 years from the Hall of Fame. He gets in with 86.2% of the vote. 86.2 was the highest percentage of votes. Just behind him at 86 flat was Tim Raines, an outfielder for the Montreal Expos, been around for years. Rock Raines, as he was known. Now, why did it take him 10 years to the last possible time to make it on the Hall of Fame ballot and get into Cooperstown? Guy had over 2,600 hits, but 170 home runs and 980 runs batted in. The offensive numbers don't scream at you. Now, Chris and I talked about this. He had a 294 batting average, a 385 on base. Now, his slugging wasn't great, but he wasn't a power guy, obviously. But the guy walked 1,330 times and struck out 966. So his plate discipline is something that all guys should learn from. He won a Silver Slugger in 1986, was a 7-time consecutive All-Star from 81 to 87, and he's 5th on the all-time stolen base record. Now, I mean, when you compare him to Rickey Henderson, everyone's going to pale in comparison. That's something that MLB Network's Mark DeRosa mentioned to me the other day, and we'll have Mark's sound on here in just a second. But Tim Raines should have been in the Hall of Fame long ago. He was overlooked because right now we're in a time where we're looking at guys with huge pop in the bat. We don't really look beyond just the numbers on the surface. Sabermetrics really helped guys begin to see who Tim Raines really was, and that's why he finally made it into the Hall of Fame in 2017. Now, the only first ballot guy we had is Ivan Rodriguez, a catcher, probably, in my opinion, the second best catcher of all time, behind only Johnny Bench. What do they have in common besides the position that they played? They're both the only two catchers that are in the Hall of Fame to make it in on the first ballot. Now, Pudge had 2,844 hits, 311 homers, 1,332 RBIs. Okay, on base wasn't great. His average is 296, and on base 334. Right, he struck out a lot. Struck out almost 3 times as much as he walked. But the guy had 13 Gold Gloves, which was an MLB record. 7 Silver Sluggers, second all time. He nabbed over 50% of base runners 8 different times. Has a career stolen base percentage, at least of catching would-be thieves, of 46%. He's top 100 in RBI and hits all time. Saying only God knows when asked, did you take steroids or is your name going to appear? Let me go ahead and make sure I'm saying this properly. He wasn't asked if he took steroids, but does your name appear on the report? When his response is only God knows, you cannot hold that against a guy saying, well, if he wasn't emphatic enough in his, in saying that no, I didn't, he might have used, which is what Chris thinks. Now, again, if you agree with Chris, and most of you have, as far as the PED users not getting in the Hall of Fame, that's fine, and I respect that. But I hope that at least you guys see that just because you say that doesn't prove you did. I get the optics of it are horrible, but it doesn't prove you did. If you agree, get us on Facebook at OOLeftField, or on at Twitter at OOLeftField, on Facebook Out of Left Field, hosted by Chris and Graham. Now, I mentioned Mark DeRosa stopped by. If you guys have been listening to the show, which you can always find on our Facebook page that I just told you about, or Twitter page, you know Mark DeRosa had a chance to talk with us the other day. If you didn't, here's what Mark DeRosa from MLB Network had to say about the guys who he thinks should be in the Hall of Fame and the snubs who have yet to get in who deserve a shot. Have a listen.
Before I let you go, we have about just another week and a half or so until the Hall of Fame vote comes out. Who do you see as being the guys that are going to make it in on this ballot? About 34 guys on this ballot. Tim Raines, probably the biggest name who hasn't gotten in yet. And we're starting to see Edgar Martinez come in there, a DH who's kind of getting that feel of should a DH be in with Big Papi right around the corner. Does he set a precedent of making it in, or are they going to hold him out?
No, I think they set a precedent. I think Edgar, in his, I always look at it, did he dominate the sport when he was in the lineup? And Edgar Martinez did just that. Rock Raines deserves to be in. I think when you compare him to Ricky Henderson, everyone pales in comparison to Ricky Henderson, but he was one of the best players in his time. Jeff Bagwell's a guy I think deserves to be in. You run into the tricky situations. I get it with the PEDs, but at the end of the day, Barry Bonds is the greatest player I've ever had the opportunity to face or play against, and what he was able to do. So we will see. Mike Mussina is also interesting because he was so great for so long, and I think he kind of gets lost in the shuffle. But
what about the Crime Dog? The Crime Dog is a guy,
yeah, exactly.
I think, to me, it's kind of a travesty. He hasn't made it in yet, and I've been making that case. What's your take on Fred McGriff?
My take on Fred McGriff is that he should be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, the numbers add out. You could tell he was a guy who did it the right way. He batted fourth in every lineup. That's how I look at it. At the end of the day, did you carry franchises in the middle of the order for longer than 10 years? I mean, his entire career, no matter where he played, whether it was San Diego, Toronto, Atlanta, I know that's where his bread was buttered, but he was always in the middle of the order and always making an impact. So that's it. The Hall of Fame's tricky for me to talk about because all those guys were so great. I was in such awe of them as a player. So, I mean, to me, it's funny. The PED stance, it's obviously lightning. You can tell by the percentages of votes the guys are getting now. And, hopefully one day, guys like Roger Clemens, guys like Barry Bonds will be in.
Mark, thank you very much.
All right.
And thank you, Mark, for taking time with us. It was great to have a chance to talk with him. And I agree. Fred McGriff, I said this, there's no reason he shouldn't be in. And he only gets 21.7% of the vote? It is a travesty. There is no reason that the Crime Dog, one of the best lefty hitters in the 90s, should not be in the Hall of Fame. Nothing shows that he didn't use. Sure, he had an uptick at the tail end of his career. Never failed a drug test. Was never even talked about being in the PED discussion. How do you not put a guy near 500 home runs in the Hall of Fame? It makes no sense. And next year is his last year on the ballot. He should be in, but still, he's 55% of the way practically. That's got to be a huge jump in votes. I think that should happen. We'll see if it does. Now, Lee Smith falls off the ballot. Curt Schilling's at 45%. Curt Schilling should be in the Hall of Fame, guys. There's no question. We discussed this. The numbers say it. No matter what he says on social media, how much he puts his foot in his mouth, you do not keep a guy out of the Hall of Fame because what he says on social media makes you upset. You put him in the Hall of Fame because what he did on the field was impressive, was Hall of Fame worthy, and Curt Schilling was. Now, two guys who might not quite meet that criteria, Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, both saw their numbers rise up about 10% over the 50% mark. Nobody with 5 years left on the ballot and gaining more than 50% of the vote have ever not been inducted into the Hall. So guys, prep yourselves. You're hearing it here first. Expect Clemens and Bonds to eventually see the Hall of Fame. Mark DeRosa mentioned that as well. Bonds is one of the most feared players. I get some of it's tainted, but he was a great player before he began to juice. He was a Hall of Fame player then. Should still be a Hall of Fame player now. You know my stance on it. We're not going to get too deep into it. Now, Edgar Martinez, as Mark discussed, ended up with 58.6% of the vote. He's on his way up. You've got to put him in soon. Big Papi is 6 years away. Got to wait 5 calendar years, then your first year on the ballot begins. We've got until about 2024, just about 2024, 23, in that area, is when David Ortiz will be on the Hall of Fame ballot. He should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. You need to have Edgar Martinez in as a DH to set the precedent. Don't put Papi in and leave Edgar out. Now, the other big guys, the ones that came the closest, the heartbreakers, Vladimir Guerrero at 71%. You'll see him in there next year, guys. I promise you that. He's worthy of being in the Hall of Fame. I think should have been a first ballot guy. I'm surprised he didn't. The ballot was relatively weak this year. Thought he would have gotten in, just misses. But the one that's the most painful is Trevor Hoffman. Less than 1% missing to get into the Hall of Fame. Was at 74 and change. Needed to make it 75. I asked Hall of Famer John Smoltz, a great starter in his own right and also a Hall of Famer as a closer as well. 200 wins, 150 career saves. Here's what John Smoltz thinks about Trevor Hoffman.
Here with Hall of Fame pitcher John Smoltz of the Atlanta Braves and now with MLB Network. John, with the Hall of Fame vote on its way out pretty soon, we see Trevor Hoffman on, and Jeff Passan came out saying that he would not be voting for Trevor Hoffman, is not a fan of the save stat, and the only person he'd be voting for in recent, or in coming ballots rather, would be Mariano Rivera because of his postseason statistics. As a pitcher who has 200 plus wins, 150 plus saves, what's your take on the save statistic in baseball, where now a closer has become such a specialized pitcher and they're only coming in for a short amount of time?
Well, Hoffman did it well before the specialization has taken a new form, and he's one of the best ever, so he'll get in the Hall of Fame. That's a no-brainer.
And thank you, John, for that. It was an absolute honor to talk to the Hall of Famer, John Smoltz, and I agree. The big thing you're going to have to worry about, guys are going to question is, how do I put in Trevor Hoffman and not put in Billy Wagner? I see the issues there. Now, Wagner is 5th all-time in saves. And the thing that people are going to have to wrap their minds around and kind of come to grips with is that as a closer, right now you're in an era where it's a specialized role. So don't hold guys out because of the era in which they are playing. Similar to what DeRosa said about Tim Raines, the era in which he played. Same with Fred McGriff was top of his time. Billy Wagner was top of his time. I said I don't think he'll be in the Hall of Fame. I might be wrong on that. He might be in the Hall of Fame. He probably deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. The numbers don't scream at you, but when you're 5th all-time in saves, you are a power arm between the early 90s and mid-90s into the 2000s. It's a good possibility. So, guys, hope you enjoyed it. We love having you guys take a look at the videos, listen to the show. Remember to check us out at OO Left Field on Twitter, Out of Left Field, hosted by Chris and Graham on Facebook. And don't forget to take a look and please join the Out of Left Field baseball community. We will see you guys back in a couple of days with a new show, Out of Left Field. See you soon.